Big night in Washington politics right now. The very first results are coming in during Washington's presidential primary. I'm King 5 political reporter Natalie Brand, and you are looking at our new elections hub created for us specially by Microsoft Power BI. Now, these are the results we have so far, and you can see most of the state's 39 counties have reported, and it is overwhelming for Trump. He has more than 76% of the vote statewide at this early hour, with a good chunk of the vote already in. Help us analyze some of these results, going through county by county, looking at some of the big counties. King County, Trump is over 70% in almost all of them, right clear across the state.
He laid the Trump card on the Evergreen State tonight. There is no county where I even see any delegates yet going to anybody but him. Big night in Washington State, shows national momentum. Not a terrible surprise, but still a really strong showing.
And let's talk about the delegate allocation. The presidential primary on the Republican side does count for delegates, and we have 44 of them, including 3 in each congressional district, in each of the 10 congressional districts, and then 14 statewide. That's 11 individuals, 3 party officials. So right now, you can see that Trump is almost clean sweep of the delegates. At this point, we are still waiting for the bigger population centers to fill in, and the Secretary of State's office won't officially award them until every last vote is counted. But at this point, he could sweep all 44.
Yeah, it won't be enough to get the Republican nomination, but he'll be very close after tonight. 44 is going to close the gap to just a few dozen, actually.
So now let's take a look at the Democratic side, because while this is more of a beauty contest, it doesn't count at all in terms of delegates. Those allocations already happened through the March caucuses. But the results, if you compare the caucuses to the primary, there's quite a big difference, because as you may remember, Bernie Sanders swept every single last county in the state. But Clinton, she is actually winning counties according to these primary results. She is represented by the darker shade of blue, and she even won, as you can see, King County. Yeah. What does this tell you?
It's easier to mail in a ballot than it is to go to a caucus, and a small motivated group similar to the Pat Robertson Republican caucus decades ago can really overrun a state system. So you're seeing here Hillary Clinton is doing much better amongst Democratic primary voters.
So far we have results from 2 solidly Republican counties, Adams County, Lewis County, working class, socially conservative areas, and Jefferson County up here in Port Townsend. Not swing areas by any means, but the county to watch in these results is Snohomish County so far. It tends to be a good barometer of the statewide margin. Thus far, we see a slight lead for Jay Inslee in that county. If that holds, it's a good sign for him statewide.
Oh, look, King just colored in.
And this is actually a promising sign for Inslee. This is a few ticks up from his performance in 2012, where he achieved about 60% of the primary vote in King County. It's looking like the numbers are holding a lot like 2012 thus far, maybe a slight tick up for Jay Inslee. If that holds, it could be another 4 to 5 point win for Inslee, much like in the 2012 primary. If you look east of the mountains to places like Franklin County, which is Pasco, Garfield County, one of the most Republican counties in the state, we actually see Murray in first place, mainly probably because the Republican vote is getting a little bit split. Vance is not an incumbent, has less name familiarity. We're going to see that pattern continue. And in fact, we're filling in here pretty blue. But really, the real decisive margin here is here in King County, where Murray is carrying over 2/3 of the vote in early returns. This is not a margin which a Republican can catch up statewide. And frankly, Murray is breaking 50% in a lot of the swing counties. This thus far looks like a pretty decisive result for Murray. We'll watch as more comes in.
And I should mention to our viewers that when you're looking at this map, the darker blue means a decisive win over 60%. The lighter shade of blue is under 60%. So we can see the difference between Snohomish here at 50.5 and, of course, as you were mentioning, King County. This is a very, very popular senior senator who has risen to one of the top leadership positions on the Democratic side in the U.S. Senate. And it's a very unusual year to be running as a Republican, which we were speaking to as a group. Now let's take a look at the governor's race, where we have a little bit of a different picture here. We see Inslee still up at 52.5, Bryant at 35.6, but we have a lot of red filling in on the eastern side of the state, which is typical if we look back, 4 years ago, 4 years prior. What are these results?
Now that we've gotten some more results, and an interesting point of concern for Inslee, it's here in Mason County, which is Shelton, and down here in Cowlitz County, Kelso Longview. These are more white working class counties. It appears that the results we're getting may indicate that Inslee is struggling potentially a little bit with that vote.
It's interesting as you look at that map that Natalie was just talking about, you really get a feel for where the voters are in Washington. Whitman County, of course, Washington State University. It's a university town. It's going to trend more liberal. Break down the west side of the state, you guys, in terms of...
Yes, and particularly focusing on Grays Harbor County, because it used to be, right, as Natalie has reported, a Democratic county, and now it is trending and has trended recently very Republican and big time.
I'd say watch the 19th legislative district. We've only had 2 Republicans elected to the House since 1936. We had 1 senator in 1980 that was elected, but the Quigg family, it was J.T. Quigg, and the Quigg family are pillars of that community. That's how that happened. It could happen tonight. They could make history, and part of it is because that is one of the strongest Trump districts in the state.
Let's show you what it looks like on the map when you're missing King County. Right now, this is the governor's race, and we have it right at 50-50 with Bryan up by 470 votes. This is Inslee winning the 2 other key counties, Pierce and Snohomish, but it's amazing what happens when you take King County out of the equation. So these are the new numbers with the map completely filled in, and King County, we were eagerly awaiting King County. You can see Governor Inslee up over 70% in that county, bringing his win right now, his margin to 56-43. Without King County, remember, we were looking at about 50-50. We were waiting for King to fill in, and we were also waiting for Skagit, where he is also up right now. Now to some of the really interesting statewide measures. Statewide minimum wage, $14.33. You can see it's been approved with nearly 60% of the votes that have been counted so far. An extremely big win in King County, 70% here. Eastern Washington did not go for minimum wage as much, with the exception again of Whitman here. So the darker shade denotes a larger, in this case, rejection of over 60%. So this is what minimum wage looks like. Carbon tax did not pass. Actually, it was rejected overwhelmingly. Only 1 county, King County, approved this measure. This is the carbon tax swap measure that had a lot of environmental and progressive groups divided. And ST3, which a lot of us were eagerly watching. There's no polling going into tonight, so we didn't really know what to expect. You can see it's been approved 55-45. King County giving this measure the win here with an approval rate nearly 60%, just under 90,000 votes. Pierce County rejecting Sound Transit 3, and Snohomish a very narrow victory, just over 3,400 votes.
We just got word that California, Ricky, did you say went to Clinton? Is that right? Went to Clinton. And Oregon as well, and Washington as well has been declared, as well as Hawaii. Idaho has been declared to go to Donald Trump, and you just saw.
And you just saw that change reflected on the screen. So it shows now that Hillary Clinton has 209 electoral votes, 172 for Donald Trump. California, with the mother lode of electoral votes there, over 50 of them.
And 270 is the magic number to clinch the presidency.
This is the map that we've been watching. The states in yellow still too close to call, and particularly Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are the ones that are critical right now. If you were to count up the electoral votes, those are the ones that matter. Arizona also too close to call at this hour, which we were eagerly awaiting to see what Arizona would do if it would be as close as it is tonight. Marco Lowe, what are you noticing on this board?
The Rust Belt is a real problem for Hillary Clinton tonight. I think Arizona was not really in too many people's category for her, but Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota absolutely are. And the trending, particularly in Wisconsin, I don't think is very heartening for her troops tonight.
Yeah. Something else that we're watching at the Washington state level is the balance of power in Olympia in the State House. And if we can take a look, so this is based on the latest trends. A lot of these races will come down to very thin, narrow margins. So too close to call, but this is what it looks like in the State House. It looks like Democrats could be on target to pick up 2 seats. The total going into tonight, or the margin, was 50-48. So if they were to grow their majority, that could happen. In the state Senate going into tonight, the Republicans, the majority coalition caucus, was at 26-23, but it looks like Democrats perhaps could be on their way to picking up 1 seat, and we'll show you why if we can take a look at a full screen with one of the big races we've been watching. This is the 41st Legislative District, which includes Bellevue and Mercer Island. The incumbent Republican Steve Litzow is currently down by 10 points, but again, a pretty narrow margin there, under 5,000. So we will be continuing to keep a close eye on that. Interesting to note that this is one of the races that President Obama got involved in robocalling. Now to another close one that we are watching. This is District 28. In South Sound and Pierce County, and incumbent Republican Steve O'Ban is up right now, but not by much. You can see his challenger, Melissa Peliquin, is just a few points behind him. So those are the 2 races that we will really be watching that has implications for the balance of power in the state Senate.
King 5 has partnered with Survey USA to get feedback on how Washingtonians voted in this election. And one of the things we wanted to know was what qualities are important to you in a presidential candidate.
And are you voting for a candidate or against their opponent? David Espinoza Hall is here to break down the data for us using Power BI. David.
Yes, what a night so far, guys. Well, check this out. We wanted to check in with Clinton voters on what were some of the important qualities that they saw for this lady, Hillary Clinton. This is what we found. Before I break it down, take a good look. Experience in government, right around 46%. Pretty high, right? I found that interesting, or I wasn't really too surprised, I should say, because she had the experience as a first lady with Bill Clinton being the president and also the Secretary of State. Now, here is where it got interesting for me. Honesty and integrity tied, basically, 13% between the 2 of them. I found that interesting when we talk about honesty, because recently we've all been following the scandal involving her in these emails. So that's what I found interesting about this particular graphic. Now let's flip things and talk about Donald Trump, but also keep this in mind. 13% here. I have to move quickly, 30 seconds. So important qualities for Trump. Hillary had 13%, Trump at 42%. Remember, he had that tape issue with Billy Bush and the lewd comments. Also real estate. He and his father, they had the real estate operation. They were sued for discriminating against minorities. 20%, that's probably what you would expect in terms of creating jobs and standing one's ground, right at 15%. Then we move now to the last graphic. Washington voters, what they were for and against. In terms of Clinton voters, 64 were in favor of Hillary, 35% were not in favor of Trump. And then when we go to Trump's side, 59%, pretty close, were in favor for Trump, and then 38% were against Hillary Clinton. So that's a breakdown of what Washington voters were for and against. Mark and Lori.
All right, David, thank you. And as we head back to NBC's election night coverage, let's take another look at the Electoral College picture. Right now, Clinton with 104 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 137.
And in just about a minute from now, the candidates will add to those totals as polls close in 4 states with 21 electoral votes, including the battleground state of Nevada.
We will continue to track the big and national races, and we'll be back in about 25 minutes.